City of Delaware Historic Preservation Commission meeting of April 27th, 2016. Have a roll call, please.
Mr. Coleman.
Present.
Mr. Kehoe.
Here.
Mr. Nicely.
Here.
Ms. Riviera. Here. Councilman Rohr.
Here.
Vice Chairman Hatton.
Here.
Chairman Koch.
Here. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the motion summary of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting held on March 23rd, 2016, as recorded and transcribed. Have you had an opportunity to review the transcription, and are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A motion and a second.
Who seconded?
Okay.
Kyle, Mr. Rohr, Councilman. There you go. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Coleman.
Abstain.
Mr. Kehoe.
Yeah.
Mr. Nicely.
Yes.
Ms. Riviera.
Yes.
Councilman Rohr.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hatton.
Yes.
Chairman Koch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Item 3 on the agenda, 3A, is application 2015-1768. This is a request by 12 West Restaurant for a certificate of appropriateness for a time extension to April 30th, 2016 for the existing temporary vestibule and to request a permanent installation of the previously approved temporary vestibule for 12 West William Street, which is Zone B2 in the Central Business District and located in the transitional sub-district of the Downtown Historic District overlay. Do we have a staff report, Diane?
Yes, we do. Going through quickly with our location maps. The zoning is B2. And the property is located in the transitional sub-district of our historic district.
Could I get you to speak up a little bit?
I think I'm close enough.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, and here's an aerial. And in referencing the report, in September of 2015, at the HPC September meeting, HPC indicated to the applicant that HPC is open to approving the installation of a temporary sidewalk vestibule due to the configuration of the restaurant and where it is situated with the winter winds and so forth, creating that massive air volume into the restaurant when the door was opened. And the structure would be considered temporary, being installed in October and removed the following March. And HPC had approved that concept, with the understanding that this would be a temporary installation and this would be a pilot test case for the city, as this is the first type of installation that has ever been approved in our historic district. And with that, there was a number of conditions with the applicant maintaining an approved sidewalk use permit for the outdoor patio area, current insurance coverage, and liability waiver in favor of the city. And with the applicant understanding and agreeing that the installation would be on a temporary one-time, one-year basis, with the renewal being considered again the following year after a staff and applicant debriefing in the spring of 2016. And the other conditions as listed in the report adhering to the structural standards. And in addition, the city decided to issue a temporary license, which would be also renewable and revocable in order to place that structure on the city sidewalk, which is the city right-of-way. The applicant selected an awning company who provided engineering drawings, and it included all the code details, including the ADA requirements. An installation permit was issued by our city inspection division, and the installation itself did pass all of the approvals. The applicant also obtained the revocable sidewalk use permit as requested, and this was for both the patio and the vestibule. And as I said, the city did issue that temporary license, allowing the encroachment into the public right-of-way for the specified time period of October 1st, 2015 through March 31st of 2016, on which date the vestibule was to be removed. And as indicated, the owners, acknowledged this was the test case, and that the future of additional vestibules for other possible applicants, would be dependent upon the successful implementation of this case. The time frame for the removal of the vestibule had expired. The applicant was informed of that and also notified that they would need to come to HPC to request an additional time extension. And with that, in addition to requesting a time extension to April 30th, the applicant is now requesting that the vestibule be installed on a permanent basis on the city sidewalk. And so the applicants are here today, and as we had indicated, the temporary vestibule is still in place. The door has been removed, but the sidewalls are still in place. And the applicant also provided comments, which are included in your report, expressing, how, successful they felt that the vestibule was, and their reasonings for requesting the permanent installation. Now, going into our staff analysis and staff comments, being that the city, luckily is experiencing a uptick in our economy, and with that, a substantial increase in the number of visitors and patrons, that are visiting our downtown. And all of the techniques that the businesses have used over the years to try and attract the patrons and visitors, such as the patios and the planters and, sandwich boards and so forth. All of those items that are on the sidewalk are now unfortunately preventing that free flow of pedestrian traffic and giving that appearance of a cluttered sidewalk. And all of these methods were able to be employed because of the city's ordinances of allowing that temporary intrusion onto the sidewalk. And the applicant understands that the city has to basically judge this installation by the current codes and legal parameters that we have to work with. And after soliciting comments from all the other various departments within the city, a time extension, was viewed to be feasible, but allowing a permanent installation into the city right-of-way that was not viewed as being favorable. And so at this point, with the requested time frame of April 30th, 2016, now after that date, that the vestibule should be disassembled. And again, being that this was a test case and, the analysis that we're hoping all of you had read in the staff report, the city, like I said, is bound by that temporary definition, and allowing a permanent installation would require a series of other legalities and steps in the zoning process. And until that time, if HPC does choose to allow that permanent installation, the applicant would be asked, to remove, to keep that vestibule on a temporary basis until such time, other arrangements could be made. But as of now, staff is recommending that the temporary status be maintained. So if anyone has any other questions or comments?
I had a question for staff. I was just kind of curious, you talked about talking to other departments, and I see on page 2, we kind of have some feedback from the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give us maybe some more specific feedback that you got from other departments? Had you talked to other area merchants? I was kind of looking for a little more detail on what maybe the feedback. So we know the right-of-way was an issue, but what else?
Right, and as I said, that we have to make our comments and decisions within the parameters
Right.
of our existing code. And one comment from the city engineer, as we have mentioned on page 5, the city engineer indicated creating permanent conditions could jeopardize state and federal roadway funding as well. He indicated that when the city does apply for the grants and low interest loans, from ODOT or the Ohio Public Works Commission, they do ask for what types of temporary or permanent intrusions are in the city rights of way. And, that has been a concern even with the patios and other items that are being placed on our sidewalks.
And one of the things I think that the HPC discussed when we talked about this the first time was that by limiting that to establishments that have the patio permit and it sits within that footprint, I think there's a lot of different concerns around this, but right away maybe isn't one of them that jumps out at me, because it's already within really let's call it a border or a kind of sectioned off area. So it's not really, I understand legally it's in the public right of way, but we've kind of given them an easement, if that makes sense, when we give a patio. So I can't walk, that's not impeding me or my family or anybody else from walking down that sidewalk. So the right of way thing kind of strikes me as unusual.
I guess I was surprised to hear that, but apparently some federal grants require
Okay.
right of way to be, fee simple, if you will, for lack of a better word.
So, but wouldn't our patio have that same
Well,
negative
that-
effect?
To be honest with you, our department, the planning department, shepherds the patios. There's other departments who, Public Works is in charge of the sidewalks that they want to be a little more restrictive than other departments.
Right.
And, we've been the champion to get those in over the years. So there's a lot of give and take to make
Sure.
the patios work and to, to make this work. So
It would, and you brought up a good point, would it be because the patio permits are in essence temporary and renewed? And if
Right.
that's the case, could we do that same thing if we chose to with vestibules?
I think that, when this came in last September, last fall, the intent was, let's see how it plays out
Right.
this year. If it works fine, that's something that we can consider in the future from a HPC perspective and from a city perspective, the departments across the board to get their
Right.
their review of it.
Okay.
And at this point, we haven't heard any complaints about the temporary.
Right.
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 So from staff's perspective, anything HPC would do tonight would really be just kind of saying, other than simply, I think, extending to the April deadline, which is what, 3 days, I
Right.
think, at this point.
Really, it's an aesthetic issue. If you would indicate that you want a permit, you'd allow there permanently, it'd be from an aesthetic perspective.
Right.
This is kind of a unique request. There'd be a minimum 2 other steps. One step is Chapter 1149-13 of our zoning code addresses public sidewalk use and occupation. It addresses just temporary uses.
Okay.
It doesn't say anything can be in there permanently. We'd have to do a code amendment to our code to allow permanent structures. The other issue would be the mechanism to allow this. This is legality issue. It's
Right.
way above our departments. Is if you let somebody permanently use the right of way, legally, do you sell it to them? Do you do a licensure? Do you? I mean, that's a legal question. I'm
Didn't we
not sure
go
what
through
the
all of
answer
this with the patio permits?
Well,
And again, I think
when it's
because,
temporary, it's one
but you
thing.
could put the same onus, I think, on the individual, the same way that they've invested in wrought iron, aluminum, or cast, whatever their fencing is, they've made an investment in that, knowing that next year the city may change their mind and not renew their permit or anyone's permit, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
At any time, we.
Right, so, and again, I'm just saying, if we wanted to go down that road, couldn't we take that same approach with vestibules? And again, I understand zoning would probably, same way the patio, we started it, but then I think zoning, city council, everybody else kind of.
Yeah, I think the key word, what I'm understanding from permanent means that's their property. And for them to acquire that property,
Right,
there's a process.
right.
And it's a public process, and you can't
Right.
give property away.
Well, that's why I'm looking, at maybe there's an alternative to the word permanent.
Well, no.
Or the word temporary. Can the word temporary be magnified? Does temporary have to mean October to
No.
April? Can temporary be a period of 2 years to be
Yeah.
revisited at the end of 2 years?
It's probably a question for our attorney,
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, I mean, like I said, we do that with the patios already. I would think we could use that, if we wanted to.
We
use
renew
that same
patios
template.
every year, and actually,
Right.
we're going through the process of renewing it since
Right.
it's coming up.
I mean, in my non-legal mind, I would think we could just use that same template again if we wanted to,
Mhm.
if we wanted
It's
to
just sort of the
pursue.
same thing as the patio,
Yeah.
it's just the fence,
Right.
it's just
Are the sidewalks wider there on that street than they are
quite a
on
bit.
Yes.
Sandusky? Okay. Because
I don't
I've
know.
never noticed a mass of people being crowded up here. Which you said, pertaining to the right of way.
The applicants are here. Would you care to come up and introduce yourselves, give your name and address and your connection to the case and participate?
Good evening, everybody. David DeStefano, owner of 12 West William Street, Delaware.
Ron Criswell, partner 12 West, 40 West William Street.
All right.
Do commission members have any questions for the applicant?
Well, just to state, I think your vestibule looks really nice, and unless you're really inspecting the entrance as you're walking in, you don't really notice that it's temporary. I think it's very attractive, and it blends well with the building. And you position it fits well within your patio area also.
Thank you. When we, had a design and we chose it, we try to do best we could to service our needs while respecting the rules here. So that was the intent behind it. And I can tell you for certain in the 6 months we've had it, it's meant a lot to us. From not only from our customer experience, because I think most of you have been in our restaurant, you know how small it is. It's 38, 40 seats. 20, when that door opens, everybody's impacted. From the kitchen grease, everything all the way out to the front, but the people immediately there, and we call it the L booth. There's 5 or 6 people there, and 4 or 5 at the bar right there. They're immediately impacted. So it's made a big difference on their customer experience. It's made a big difference in our bills, our heating and cooling bills. We're more obviously on the heating side so far. But as we all know, recently is April 14th. It snowed. You know, as crazy as that sounds. So it's made a big difference for us, and it's helped us maintain a level of customer service that we need to. And I can tell you, we average about 1,000 people a week coming in our doors. Nearly maybe 900 to 1,000 people. Not one complaint. And we've had numerous complaints, or numerous compliments that people have enjoyed it. They appreciate the effort that we've put in to enhance their experience. As you all know, we've inherited, we bought a building that had some challenges, and then it had some other challenges, and now we have some challenges next door. It's not been probably the best test case, but maybe it's been the most challenging. It's turned out to work. So we continue to work on the building, and we have other examples of things we've done we'll share with you later tonight if need be, but that vestibule has been an asset for us, and we've only had a positive experience with it, and we've only had, like I said, we've only had people that have appreciated the effort we put in and complimented the vestibule.
Would it be your intention if we found a legal way to extend the uptime of the vestibule, would it be your intention to leave the walls and doors there in the warm weather, or are you going to remove the walls and door and just have the awning there in the warm? What's the plan?
In the winter months, again, we didn't know how much we'd rely on this. You know, when it was a test case, when we first put it up, we knew we needed it for the winter, but we didn't realize what it would mean just generally to the overall well-being of, like I said, everything from our bills to our customer experience to protection of people when they leave, you know, whether it's the hard rain or sleet or hail and coming in and out of the restaurant. But we would, in the winter months, we'd leave it up like it is like that. We would like to all year round and just take the door off. Because when it gets hot, obviously being black to blend in with the colors of the scheme of the building, it gets a little warm in there is what we'd suspect. So we just take the door off. But that cuts down on wind flow. And I will tell you, since the building next door has been torn down, that wind has whipped around there. And I don't know the future of the place next door, but
It's gone.
Did
you notice it's gone?
It is gone.
Could
that's
someone
for sure.
tell the old patrons that it's gone because they keep showing up?
And so that helps. Just having the side walls cuts down on the wind whipping around the building.
And it does provide, the one thing we've noticed previous to the vestibule, when it was raining, when we had some pretty rough weather outside during the summer, we would get people gathering at that front door because there's really no other place to stand. It was also causing us problems because the water, the barrier is the door, that's it. So we're getting tons of water in through the front door. Well, now that we have the vestibule, it provides some protection for people waiting on their cars that are just coming in. Also people when they're putting their names in and we're telling them, hey, go and explore other parts of Delaware while you're waiting. It gives them a place to gather. It also keeps that water from kind of destroying our threshold in the front of the restaurant.
Have you seen the staff report that city staff drafted for this case? It's,
It was emailed.
Ron, it's exhaustive. It's 6 pages long. It includes information about contact with many other city staff people and the city attorney and all that. It's extensive. This is not something that's been glossed over. This represents an issue for the city.
If I might, first of all, I've been in the restaurant once or twice. I've seen Ron there many times, and I love the restaurant. And I'm I'm very happy that the vestibule has done, what it was intended to do during the cold weather months. And I've been there, I can attest to that. The concern I've got is there's a couple. One, this is a precedent-setting approval, and that was, something that we really talked about back in the fall. And my concern is if we make this permanent or give it the appearance of being permanent, we've essentially, pretty much made that something that's available to essentially any business front downtown. And me personally, again, you guys have done a great job with the design. It's very tasteful, and it's obviously utilitarian as well. But I'm just concerned that, that's not necessarily something I would want to see sprouting on every other business front downtown or every third business front downtown. And I think, one of the purposes of having it as a seasonal thing during the cold weather months was, twofold. One, it doesn't permanently affect the streetscape. And it does, it does intrude into, the visual streetscape. It does visually interrupt, the flow as you're walking down the street. Again, it's done tastefully, but it is an intrusion into that, that visual
I think it says
flow.
welcome.
And then the other thing is, it just, again, having that break in between, and I think originally it was October 1st through April or March 31st, 6 months basically, or 5 months. Again, it gives the opportunity to take care of the worst of the weather, but it also, again, it doesn't make it a permanent structure that permanently affects the streetscape. And it is actually a disincentive for somebody to go ahead and put one of these up if the precedent is I can put it up and it's essentially a permanent structure in maybe not in a legal sense, but in a physical, practical sense, then, it's a much more appealing option for a lot of other, storefronts. And this is a precedent. So that's my concern with making it, really go beyond the original prescribed period of time, or, I would be fine with making it 6 months, to the end of April. But I, personally would have some concern about that. And again, I state that as somebody who fully, understands your concerns. I've been in the restaurant many times. I was there pre-vestibule, and I remember, what that was like in the winter time. It was not the most pleasant thing. So I think, the city staff and the HBC, tried to, go as far as we felt at the time we could go to try to, mitigate those issues without, really, creating a precedent that's going to tie our hands going forward and, dramatically, or has the potential to dramatically, change the streetscape that we've all worked so hard, tenants, landlords, city, to maintain and actually improve over the years. So those, I just want to kind of give you those are my thoughts.
Can I ask a question? Is any other downtown store owners asked for a vestibule since ours has gone up?
Dave Eflin, the director, said he had a few calls over the winter about temporary ones, and he said this is a pilot until we see how this plays out, and we'll address it next year.
So I think it's safe to assume there will be.
But I would ask the question then, running a small business, as everyone knows, is very difficult. Why would someone invest in a vestibule unless it was needed? It's not an area for entertaining. It's usually just an area of need. So if someone else needed, I wouldn't want to be standing in the way of having them. If again, it enhances the customer experience and you're bringing people downtown. That's what we're all trying to do.
But Dave, if we allowed you to build a 4-foot extension on the front of the building, permanent construction, fasten it to the sidewalk, that would also improve your business, and it would make your restaurant larger, and it would be a great thing.
Well, maybe
Except
that's how we figure out this.
I think this would be a negative impact on the historic district and a lot of what people appreciate about coming downtown that they didn't 20 years ago.
We're not asking for that, though. I think that's taking it to an extreme. We're just, that's 2 by 3. If it's something that just, you all would have to approve anyone coming through here if it just handled the elements. Again, we're inheriting these old buildings. We're just doing what we need to do, not what we want to do.
I'm just wondering, I don't see that it really detracts from the cityscape or whatever that much. It just looks like an entrance to me. But since we are basing a temporary vestibule on somebody that already has the patio permit, I don't understand why you can't then also base it on the width of the sidewalk in that area too.
Right, and those were all things that would need to be hammered
Since that's a
out.
much wider sidewalk there.
I think, like I
Plus,
said,
also, this is the only main business that gets that wind coming in that direction too. The rest and most of the businesses are in more of a smaller enclosed street type area too.
Sherry, am I misunderstanding your comment? You wouldn't see a problem with enclosing the entire patio area with an enclosure like that?
No, I'm just
Because
talking
it's the
about the
same
doorway.
thing?
Oh, no, I'm just talking about the little doorway.
Okay.
We tried that too. But if I can comment, so in my understanding, it's a permanent vestibule. It can be taken down. It can be taken down one day a year. It makes it a temporary vestibule. What's the difference between my vestibule and that picnic table that's sitting right there that's going to be there for the entire year? What's the difference between the intrusion of that into the public right-of-way that's inside my patio and the vestibule? There's really no difference. So I don't understand. I mean, if I needed to, if that patio table was light and had a risk of blowing away, it would be secured to the ground as well. I don't understand the difference between the patio table that's there year-round and the vestibule. When the vestibule, both of them are helping us, well, control our costs. You know, we're business owners. We have a focus on how do we maximize, how do we minimize our costs and maximize our profit? Well, that vestibule does that. And anyone downtown or any business owner would be crazy not to understand that, oh, wow, this is actually going to help us. It's going to cut down on our costs. It's going to cut down on issues. It's going to make the customer satisfaction so much better. Why wouldn't I want one of these? You know, and to be quite honest, what brings people to town is businesses. And, you know, I think we've had a very, very fortunate effect, and we've had a lot of people that come in. I see 4 to 5 people every day that aren't from Delaware. They're coming to Delaware because they've heard about us, and there's so many other people like that in town. I think that's what's driving people downtown. I think if you remove patios from downtown and all of a sudden people drive through and don't see anyone on the streets, it's going to be historic. There's going to be no one here.
Well, yeah, we're not talking about removing the patio though. You know, the difference between that and the picnic table, I mean, one difference is it's a structure as opposed to a piece of furniture. So, I mean, that is a difference. And again, this is going to create a precedent. You know, if it were one and we could, you know, nail it that, okay, you know, it's only applicable to this because of the unique circumstances of this one storefront or this one patio enclosure, you know, that might be different, but I don't think you can do that. And then you do run the risk that these are going to be, you know, much more prevalent. Maybe, you know, maybe none this year, maybe one next year, maybe five, you know, these things have a tendency, if they catch on, as you say, why wouldn't you want to do something that enhances your business? But, you know, an individual could do many things that would enhance their individual business that might not necessarily, you know, be, you know, within the spirit or, you know, the code of the HPC's, you know, purview. And that's one of the reasons we have this body, is because not everything that would necessarily, you know, that would, you know, potentially, you know, make an individual business more profitable is necessarily best for the overall downtown streetscape. I mean, those are the things that we have to wrestle with, and that's, you know, we're not trying to beat individual businesses down or keep you from being profitable, but in the long game, we're trying to maintain a, you know, essentially, you know, the spirit of the code, and those codes were developed, you with a lot of thought and a lot of, sweat went into those. Well before my time in HPC, and that's what we're trying to do. So it's not about making it more difficult for anybody. It's, does this create something new that we've got to deal with? And if we give it, if we make it permanent, or essentially effectively make it permanent, it's something that is going to happen, elsewhere downtown. It most assuredly will, and we've got to be prepared to deal with that, and we've got to accept that that's something that, we're ready to have, up and down the other streets. And, I don't know that you can say, well, this is, William Street, it's more wide open than Winter Street, so you can't do it on Winter Street, even though we do it on William Street. You can't do it on Sandusky because, that's a north-south street, and it's not, prone to, predominantly westerly winds. I mean, you get into a lot of.
Couldn't you write the rules that,
What's that?
couldn't you write the rules to adapt it that it's only for, entering and exiting premises, and it's not for dining? No one's going to build something that you're not allowed to dine in or sit in.
Well, I think if you think about it, most in your building originally, I'm sure, had the door recessed. Pretty much all these buildings were built that way because it was the smart thing to do, right? Like you said, you don't want to stand there with your key and have rain pouring on you. At some point when they redid it, somebody went, wait a minute, we're giving up this 9 or 10 square feet. Let's put it out. Plus it's cheaper to do it that way, right? So in the 60s and 70s, when these things were just getting done fast and cheap, you saw some of that disappear. Now, at our last meeting, 2 of the buildings on North Sandusky are going back to the original. Even though they're giving up square footage, they're going back to the original. In fact, they're putting internal vestibules in. And if you think of most of the larger buildings, Buns is an example, even though that's newer, 1808, they have an internal vestibule because that made sense to do that, right? Not only for the, like you said, for the winter, but for the summer too, flies, those sort of things. I've eaten Mia Mexico, and I don't care whether you say it's Winter or Williams, that is one cold place if you're at the table closest to the hostess stand, because it's the only one they have. But let's take this in an opposite direction. Now, I would encourage, because of the size of Mia Mexico, I think they could have an internal vestibule and really not give up anything if you've been in there. But if now they can put it on the outside, why would they do that, right? So now we're discouraging or disincenting people to do historically accurate renovations by saying, hey, we can just put this thing on the outside. So, I think that's where Joe's going, and that's my thought. Your building's different because it's newer in the sense that it's a newer renovation. It doesn't really have any historically accurate attributes left, and that's why it's a contributing building, I think, now. But with all that being said, and keep in mind, we've talked about this before, we can't do what you want us to do. This body can't do that. I think we can extend it 3 more days without a problem at this point, but we can't do the rest of that. We can weigh in, city staff eventually. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lance, city staff would probably make the recommendation to city council, who would then direct zoning.
Well, this is where it gets complicated.
There'd be a lot of balls in the air for a while.
HPC would be the aesthetics in.
Right.
It's to change the zoning code, we'd have to get direction. Staff would have to get direction from
But if
council or above us to.
I think the patio, let's use that example, that really originated here. That was our idea.
Right.
And it germinated out. I'm not exactly sure whether it was council first or zoning. So I think we could do that. I'll throw just some thoughts that I had watching my daughter play soccer before I came up here. I wonder if, to Joe's point and Sherry's point and everybody's point, if there's a way that we could look at allowing this in a very restrictive sense, and some thoughts that I had would be, we would allow them, we put the restriction that they have to have the patio permit. It has to be within that. And I believe we kept it at the minimum square footage as required by ADA. Was that in there?
There was some kind of size restriction.
Okay.
Right.
So that way, we're going to say it has to be only big enough to meet ADA compliance. It has to be within the patio. And my thinking would be and I'm just spitballing here, 1 year renewal, the same as the patios. And it would be allowed only for restaurants less than a certain amount of square footage. Because my thinking is what we want to have happen is what's pretty much happening downtown. People are renovating their storefronts. They're doing the historically accurate recessed doors or internal vestibules. I don't know what that square footage is, by the way, right? But I also think that I want there to be a place in our downtown for a small restaurant that can go into some of these smaller places. We've got some of those. Not every restaurant in town needs to, how big are you guys? I'm going to guess 600 square foot total?
The dining area?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're 38 occupancy.
Okay.
40, yeah,
So
20 feet wide and 40 feet,
30.
30 feet deep.
And again, we can't make that. We could make the recommendation. We could get the ball rolling. I just kind of wanted to throw that, and maybe, is this the right time to do it, Mr. Chairman, or should we could put it back at the end of the meeting for new business, or just kind of seemed like we were talking about it, so.
I'm very torn on this application. I'm concerned about the precedent. I'm concerned about the legal issues. I'm also concerned about the architectural impact. As good a job as you guys did with this temporary, essentially a fabric and tube construction, and it's as nice a one as I've ever seen, it still is not, it's made out of tubing and fabric, and I think I'm getting at your point about the distinction between adding this or renovating the storefront
Right.
in other locations. It's been
Right.
done at 10 North Sandusky and a lot of other addresses. It's a problem. Everybody here, I think, is sympathetic to your situation and your business and your reasons. I'm worried about the second, third, fourth, and 10th shoe that's going to drop down the road.
How do you address that when this committee made a major decision last time we were here by allowing Mr. Manos, and I didn't object to that, but taking a storefront and moving it back 23 feet?
That affects,
That's a major change and deviation. This is minor compared to that.
The one distinction is that's private property and this is public. The biggest hurdle on this is the public property aspect of this.
Not what he was arguing, though. It's
Right.
not what I heard.
Yeah, but that's outside the purview of this body.
Right.
So that's why we're kind of focusing on what we do. We could,
I'm sorry, I thought that's what the chairman was saying.
yeah, we could all raise our hands and vote yes, and the city attorney or zoning or council could go,
Understood.
you got to be kidding me.
Understood.
So we're going to focus on the aesthetic part of it.
Right.
Because they're the ones that focus on the nuts and bolts and laws and all that stuff.
As to their extension, do we only have to, all we can do is what they applied for? We can't just extend it for 2 or 5 months or right now and just say like, let's revisit, let's leave it temporary pilot subject and
Because we'll work with the city.
Just leave it as it is just now.
It's your wish if you want to change that to, 2
I was
months,
just
2 more
curious.
months, 3 more months.
I mean, just
And the trouble is
this time next year and.
at some point, it becomes permanent.
Right.
Our code only
Permanent
addresses
scary.
temporary. You have that issue. I think the bigger issue, the whole thing, it's on public property. And how do you convey or give easements to public property to a private individual? Cities can't sell public property. You have to put it out to auction. Anybody could purchase it.
Right, but we've got patios. See, if we didn't have patios,
But
I get
they're,
lost
but they're
in the distinction.
temporary. And they can come down
Again,
anytime.
as these are,
And,
it's not
you know, there's-
brick and mortar.
There's some people who want them out and, we don't, but, there's.
I guess that's why
Cars have issues. It's a unique situation.
This can be taken down, obviously, when I look at building, I'm no engineer, when I think of permanent, I think of the building itself. I think it's something you can't take down unless you knock it down.
Well, in the
That
next,
can be
Permanent's
taken
what
down.
this says.
and the next,
You're using the word permanent
Yeah.
legally as a
All right. Right.
The next-
It's building.
the
So I'm
next
gonna change
issue,
this
I don't know
instead
what-
how it is now. and just-
Temporary,
Yeah.
year after year.
We'll ask again next year.
And another layer is the building code. I'm not sure what the building code deciphers between temporary and permanent. I don't know if the building code just went permanent, what it would require. I mean, they're just,
Permanent says that everybody, even if you guys sell that restaurant, the next guy's got to keep that exactly how it is. The next guy does, and then forever going forward. That's what permanent means to me. It means you just made more building.
it's,
Yeah, that,
That's
probably not a
legal definition, but.
Well, I think from that standpoint, I agree with, what Commissioner Hatton mentioned earlier about the nuts and bolts. I mean, that's beyond us, though. It's, for us to get bogged out into the legality of it, that's phase two of this discussion, when it gets to that point. I think for us, it's really down to the aesthetics, and, does it get extended by HPC? Does it get made permanent? That goes to a completely different decision-making body or groups of, or departments.
council.
So I think for us, it just comes down to, originally, when you guys came to us in October, my thought was, understand the problems during the cold weather. This was a way to, again, mitigate that. It was presented as a temporary thing for, 5 months, 6 months. That's not that big of a deal. But now it's kind of, I feel, the camel nose under the tent. It's like, well, it's here, so, now we just want to keep it. And
I said at the time, 6 months ago, that I'm hoping we could extend it.
okay, well, I think, at least I can only speak for myself, but from my sense, this was a way to actually accommodate a request that was substantially different than anything we've done before, and give us, the ability to put it up, allow that on a limited basis, not only, limited by design, but also limited by the time that it would be available or, be set up. And that was a way for us to, limit the precedent setting, example here, and how that's going to affect downtown. And I think we're opening up a can of worms if we deviate from the spirit of what we deliberated on back in October, and we change that. We're essentially doing something completely different. And if that's the pleasure of the majority, then so be it. But I think, again, we're just creating something completely different in terms of precedent than what we did back in the fall. And I have real concerns about that.
Well, my argument would be, based on that, what you approved next door, private or public, you still approved it, is a huge difference.
Well,
23-foot
for the
patio.
record, I wasn't here for that particular one, but I
argument-
understand what you're saying, but we're talking about this one now. I mean, we can't,
Right, and I am too.
we can't turn the clock back. And again, that gets to my point about precedence. Once we do something like this, the next guy is going to come to us and say, well, you did it for those guys, you got to do it for me now. And that's the concern. And again, I would not like to see, 20 of these things, marching up and down Sandusky Street. And that's what we're opening up the door for. I think having it as a temporary vestibule during the harshest part of the year is a limiting factor on whether somebody feels this is smart for them to do from a business standpoint, because it's an investment that they're making that isn't just a one-time, I put it up and I forget about it, but rather it's, I put it up, it's only there for a limited period of time. Do I want to go through that? Do I want to take it down in April? Nah, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Or, to Chairman or Commissioner Hatton's point, I'm just going to go, inside with the vestibule rather than outside. And I think that's the road we're going down. I think we should be very careful about that, because we are dramatically changing, or potentially we are opening up a precedent that will dramatically change the downtown streetscape. And once we let that genie out of the bottle, we're not putting it back in.
I have to say, I agree with Mr. Coleman on that.
For one other comment, if I could, when we originally approved this in September of 2015 as a certificate of appropriateness as a temporary structure, we didn't do that arbitrarily. We did that based on the mandate that we have from the city. And I think it bears mentioning, as I frequently do, that in order to grant any kind of a variance from those standards, anything that deviates, we have 6 criteria, one of which at least needs to be satisfied in order to justify our decision we make, whether it is to extend a temporary permit, to weigh in on whether or not we think there should be a permanent extension of this, or to simply say no. One of those is that there's no reasonable alternative, or that there would be a substantial economic reduction in the value of the property due to application of the standards and guidelines. And so I think it's worth putting into the discussion here, because we're not here, whatever we choose, we're not doing this arbitrarily. I know this commission, we have some leeway, obviously, with some of the guidelines that we have, whether it's under the garishness clause or other things, but we do have some foundations for our decision making.
And I agree, and thanks for bringing that up, because sometimes we do drift and tend to, I don't like, and we need to move beyond that. I will also point out that certainly there have been things that we have approved, and I hate to even bring up Buns because that gets thrown at me a lot. Buns patio, the garage doors at what used to be Nova, now Son of Thurman. We've certainly done things that were not right down the center lane, so to speak, of our standards. And to your point, what we approved next door, and oftentimes that's because what was there was no longer there, right? There was nothing there at Buns, so they were recreating, which for better or worse often gives you a little more leeway. In fact, the standards basically ask that what you don't do when you're adding an addition or rebuilding is that you try and recreate exactly what was built in 1885, because at that point you kind of have old with an E in Dublin, which is kind of fake storefronts with modern stuff stuck on it. So sometimes with new building you have a little more leeway. But with that being said, the other thing that we've also done is, because there is, I don't want to say there is no historical significance for your building, but there is not the same historical significance that there are for the contributing buildings, which can be bad and good. I think in one way it can be good because it does allow them a little more leeway to do things. But to circle back up, I think that I completely agree with what everybody said, and I'm usually the guy that brings up the whole precedent thing, because what does happen is if we say, okay, you can do this, we can't. It's legally we can't. Morally, it's very difficult for me to sit here and say, okay, but we're not going to allow you to do that because whatever, your building doesn't face east, your building whatever. It puts us in a very difficult position to say no. I'm still not, and I'll float it out to the commission just kind of for some feedback. Do you think that there's a way, and again, I know Lance is rolling his eyes over there. We have just the small part, so we're just kind of spitballing here. But do you think that there would be a way, if we restricted these to restaurants smaller than either a certain square footage or frontage, however you want to look at it, that have a patio permit? So in essence, and I'm just going off the top of my head, I can't think of very many, and maybe the attorney has a problem with that, because if you add so many restrictions that you essentially just create it for one building owner, I'm not sure that's okay either. But I see, I know it's a lot, but I'm just thinking it accomplishes, maybe it's middle ground. I don't know.
I think at the end of the day, like I said,
Actually, can I interrupt? Let me ask, before we get into your nuts and bolts, just anybody thoughts, yay, nay? I'm not sure.
I like that idea, and perhaps you can even put some more restrictions in, like I mentioned, maybe the width of the sidewalk. Maybe in the transitional area. So, I don't want to see that on, an Italianate building. I think you could narrow it down to maybe 4 or 5 restrictions.
One of which would be the style of the building?
Perhaps.
I think if we did move,
Because well, maybe that's going too far, but this is definitely, still, it's sort of an old Mexico building look. The stucco and the black, which is fine. It looks wonderful. But it's not like the main downtown area.
Could we limit it to, it is considered a background building? Is that something we could hang it on?
The technical term would be non-contributing.
Or a non-contributing building? I mean, because to me, again, that's the biggest concern I've got is creating precedent. And the effect of this on your building is not as jarring as it would be on an 1880, Italianate. So if you can structure it so that it is limited to, again, maybe, because I don't know, the square footage of the, dining
Frontage
space.
maybe.
If you could do that or frontage, but, if you could at least keep it to the non-contributing buildings with the patio areas, and I don't know if you can add the square footage to it, that would be great, but I think if you can at least get the non-contributing in there, and that actually would be able to stand up with future applicants, that want to put something like this up on an Italianate.
If I can
I
say
would
one
not have as
thing,
much trouble with it.
I would think the transitional sub-district would cover, to Sherry's point, rather than try and say, I don't want it on an Italianate, I'm sure there are some contributing in the transitional sub-district, but less. And we've also, just so you know, our code is more lenient in the transitional sub-district than it is in the core. And if you think of, I don't think it's in business anymore, but it used to be the print shop, and then it was going to be the Slurpee shop or the shaky shop, whatever. We allowed some things there that certainly wouldn't be done in the core district. So, yeah. Anybody else before we go to?
Well, if I could just bring this back to the concrete, which I appreciate these discussions and I agree wholeheartedly. I think there are ways we could do this in a very delimited fashion. But specific to the applicant in the application before us, we've got so much we've talked about, the temporary nature versus the permanent nature, which is a legal issue that we have really no say in, aside from kind of putting our opinions out there. We have the issue of the precedents that it sets, which is our purview. We have the issue of the compliance with state and federal regulations and right-of-ways, which is not really our business either. So I'm wondering, insofar as our main focus is on this issue of precedent, and we really have no way of even determining that tonight. I mean, we have these great ideas, but they're above our pay grade, so to speak. So I wonder if maybe we just want to fall back on what we originally started talking about, this possibility of extending the temporary status as a test case further into the future to allow these other processes to work themselves out. And then we see in the future what the lay of the land is. That way the applicants are satisfied. We're still we have that flexibility to say this is a test case and see where it goes.
Lance, would that give you opportunity then to speak with, city attorney as far as, how we might structure that to?
It buys time to know what the next steps are, because from a zone change perspective, the council ultimately makes that decision.
Right.
And because it's a zoning amendment to the code, staff would have to get direction from somebody to put that on the agenda.
But, I think
That'd be the first. The other issue is from the legalities of it being public property. How's that transfer to private?
Well,
That's a whole nother issue.
If we could wrap ourselves around a motion though that doesn't make it permanent, but makes it temporary on a year-to-year renewal, much as the patios. I mean, that really
Then it becomes a building code issue. What's permanent, what's temporary? And that's
again, that's out of our.
Can we just extend it out 6 months?
It's the wish of the commission from that.
Well,
Then you guys can figure it out.
so from a technical standpoint, we have limited purview.
If it's temporary, you have purview.
Okay.
Once it becomes permanent, that's where all the, unfortunately, open can of
What is
worms
that
is
point?
that
what's the difference between the two? What's the definition of permanent and temporary?
I think that's the heart of
That's
this
the heart of
discussion.
it, that-
If we take it down one day, does that make
Yeah.
it temporary, and then we have a vestibule raising party and put it back up the next?
Above our pay grade.
I mean-
That's the legalities of it. At the end of the day, the reason, it's, a lot of reasons we have these temporary, you have to get the city sign off, it's a liability issue from the city's perspective. Somebody falls in there, they're coming after us.
But they're coming after us as well. We
Well,
have
but-
to have insurance for
Right, but
that.
but they're gonna sue everybody. Now, once it becomes permanent, how do you transfer property to somebody? And cities just can't give property to business owners.
So
That's
they-
illegal.
Like we can make it temporary is why you're considering that
That's-
route.
Then that, well, how long is temporary? That's-
But I don't know.
Well,
We're
it's
already,
with the patio.
yeah, we're already doing it with the patios. That's why I'm lost because, you know, I underline temporary license and revocable sidewalk use permit. It seems to me,
and-
being a non-attorney, that we could simply take that language, do a search on Word, take out sidewalk, put, sidewalk patio, put in sidewalk vestibule. We've done this before, and just for those of you who weren't on the commission, you know, we kind of started it. We went through, we did the design specs. We looked up, kind of here's what we wanted. Here's the 5 or 6 different styles of the patio that we approved, because what we wanted to do was, again, take care of the design part, then say, here's the package, and it went to zoning and council or council and zoning.
You know, I
I
think,
would think we could do that again.
the climate controls the patios. So it takes care of itself each year. 4 or 5 months are not used. Originally, when that patio permit came out, the public works director at the time wanted all the fencing to come out.
Yeah.
And we found out that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I think the
Right.
first year, I wasn't here, but I think the first year they took everything out. It
I
makes
see some
sense.
hardy souls in front of Barley's all
So-
over.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really complicated.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Situation.
If you take the patio.
It would be taken up if necessary. because
Right.
They're in the right of
Right.
way.
See,
Well,
the
also,
time-
we
The
can,
vestibule is a
If it becomes
structure.
permanent
Maybe
and they
yours
own
is,
it, we couldn't take
But a
it. You know.
vestibule is a structure by definition.
Right. And it's,
but it's also stuck in with lag screws and able to be removed. So it's not a,
It's still.
as
That
temporary.
one can, yeah, but-
Could we
Well, that-
remember,
But if you use the term permanent.
could we remember that this is being recorded and this may be a conversation that's referred to? So if you're making comments that are pertinent, could you make sure it gets into the microphone and you being the only attorney present?
I'm not speaking as an attorney.
Yeah.
Well, that should
I think
probably be
staff
clear
agrees
too.
it's functional. It's
Right.
good for them, but at the end of the day, there's just so many
okay.
issues that
Well,
I don't think we have any answers yet,
so-
and it's above us at
Right.
the end of the
And,
day.
and so I think we can continue this. We can move into new business. It seemed apropos since we kind of had our beta test here, if you will, that, we kind of talk about it now, but we probably should focus more on what they are here for. So I think the thought process is if we extend this, how long do we extend it? Is that kind of where we're at right now? Do we give them, I think you had brought up, if we give them a year, let's call it 364 days, then we could say we just extended our test through winter and summer. I think Joe or someone else brought up the point, what I would not want to have happen though is then in October, let's call it October 27th, you guys are back, and if it hasn't gone through and council or zoning or whoever, still understand that it's temporary. We're extending that to increase our test data, let's call it.
I think there ought to be a condition on there that it meets the pertinent development requirements. I don't want to speak for the building code to know if after so many days it becomes permanent or temporary. Has to go
Okay.
away. I don't know the answer to that, but I'd be concerned that there may be a deadline. I know permits are good for 6 months and things. After that, they lose them. So I don't know if that's the case in this
Well,
situation or not.
if we table this, they're out of compliance,
Well,
right?
Let's at
We don't
least
want that to
figure out an
happen.
extension that it gives you time, because it sounds like you really need to go
Well,
back to the other department.
Well, and to be honest with you, we need direction of the next steps, because this is above our department at the end
Well,
of the
that's
day.
kind of what the
Well,
conversation
I think we
was.
got to get back on the, what, ultimately do we think this would end up being? And it sounds like right now the direction is going toward, it would be something that would be limited to the sub-district, if not limited to non-conforming buildings within the sub-district.
And perpetually temporary.
And it would be a temporary permit.
Same process as the
renewable
patios.
On a year-to-year basis, similar to the patios.
What amount of time? 2 months, 3 months, 1 month? I don't want
2
to
months,
drag
I
these
mean,
guys away from the restaurant
When we
every
did the, when we
fourth
did
Wednesday.
the temporary status of it to begin with, was there building code that said that this amount of time is gonna cause it to do
I
something
think we just kind of
different?
picked,
The-
start
We
winter
can
and
pick
theoretically.
5 or 6 months with the
Yeah.
request.
Just do it again then.
We wanted to get them through the winter, we had no idea.
Right,
it was gonna snow on
exactly.
April 12th.
The original request was for the winter months.
Right.
And that's why we picked March 30th.
Correct.
And until staff gets direction, I can't promise you we'll have this researched in a month or 2 months.
Well, do
In
you
the
need us to
direction
give
above.
you, all right, so do you want direction or are you looking for a motion?
I think there's direction on several areas. From the aesthetic perspective, we're going to need direction from a legal perspective. It's on public property, that's above us.
Okay.
Then we're going to need direction from a zoning perspective as we put this on the zone and, start the amendment process of planning commission and council. I
Well,
think those two are above this commission and staff.
I think,
I think the direction that he really needs is not from this body, mostly.
but you need to
We
understand,
need-
you just need, is this something that conceivably from an aesthetic standpoint, we would be able to put something together and approve this on a, temporary yearly renewal basis?
Correct.
Sounds good.
I mean,
I would hope that these would be so rare that we could just simply have, like we used to do with signs, just have them come in front of us rather than try and write guidelines. I mean, we can put some general, like we have as far as their construction, ADA compliance, those sort of things. But I would think that these, it's not like signs where we were doing 3 or 4 a month. These should be very rare, and I think it would make sense
Yeah.
for them to come in front of us.
I think if we took a straw poll, I think the outcome would be that there seems to be a consensus that we would be able to figure something out that would allow them to keep it up year-round on a renewing basis.
And like business.
Right, and there would be,
Extended
and there would be restrictions based on, where it's located and whatever else, seems appropriate that actually, we feel, legitimately makes this appropriate for this particular area of the downtown as opposed to other areas. So that's what, to me, that's what I'm hearing. What do you want?
So I'd be happy to make a motion then, if you want.
Go for it.
All right, all right. Okay, feel free to make amendments, of course. I move that we approve a certificate of appropriateness for application 2015-1768, temporary sidewalk vestibule for 12 West William Street, with the inclusion of all staff recommendations except for the following changes. In the preambular paragraph that begins, staff recommends, I would change the date to September 30th, 2016 as the deadline for the extension of the temporary license. And then in subparagraph 1, I would change that again from April 30th, 2016 to September 30th, 2016. And all other material should stand as is in staff's recommendation.
How about the request of permanent installation?
Yeah, I'll take that out.
Well, that was expressed there under staff recommendation. It says only for time extension, so.
I'll second that.
Well, we have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Is there, under further discussion, basically, all you're changing from city staff recommendations is the date to which this permission expires.
Yes, that is correct. And just clarify, my understanding on that is that we are only approving the certificate for the temporary license not for any sort of a permanent structure, and that the temporary vestibule would have to be removed by the date expressed there, September 30th, or a new permit would have to be acquired by that time, by October 1st.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little just fuzzy on the dates, okay? So we're extending this basically through September 30th.
Correct.
And then on 3, the applicant reapplies for a temporary use permit, let's say, for installation of a temporary sidewalk vestibule from a time period of,
October 1st, 2016.
okay,
So it
so
would-
they basically,
So,
it renews the following day.
right.
So, and you're having them take it down on what day?
Not necessarily. I mean, my understanding was if they are granted a temporary permit through September 30th, which is the last day of September, if they have applied for an extension, or in essence, a new temporary permit that's effective October 1st, there would be no need to remove the vestibule.
I think I'd probably just take up paragraph 3,
We could.
because I think that just muddies the waters. And because all we're doing right now is saying,
That's true.
keep going until September 30th, 2016. This was just kind of some staff recommendations, if then, which really don't apply right now.
Well, actually, though, I mean, at this point, is that just to buy time for some other, path? Or are we just gonna, are we saying it's going to be renewed from year to year? So,
I don't think we want to do that.
Because I think that's what you were going at, is just establishing who's the new, the time periods of this one will end on this day, and they have the option of renewing it for a year, the following day.
I don't know that we can do that.
Right.
I think that gets back to what
Well, I think
Lance
we get
was
to the legal ease. I think
Right.
at some point, we're gonna have to have our
Yeah, I
law
would,
director.
Okay.
Right. I would-
Buy time for a permit process, just like how you would
Okay.
for the temporary patio or whatever. Like, I mean, so then we have a temporary permit for your vestibule, just the same as you would for your patio.
And another comment on,
Do that, get
Condition.
that done before the end of.
condition 3, we also required a temporary license out here, and that condition 3 addresses that. That's a license between them and the city for liability issues also.
okay.
So that's included in condition 3.
We don't have that in place right now?
We have it in place now for temporary, that would have to be extended also.
Okay.
And
That's in there.
So,
That's why I want to keep condition 3 in there.
okay,
Okay, that's
I
fine.
see.
So we're still good.
Okay.
Okay, well, you're gonna have to change, condition 1 then. Yeah, the date on
So-
that's gonna also have to change.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, we already
Oh,
did
you did,
that.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I thought you were just doing it in the,
Yeah, I did it in the preamble, and then also in
Yeah,
There's
one.
actually 2 3s, so if you look, it's the second 3 he was referring to, it should be a 4, actually.
No.
I didn't even notice
Didn't
that.
see that.
I was not good at math, is why I was lost.
Do
Okay.
you mind repeating your motion?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm a little lost with the discussion. I apologize.
Okay, so with the understanding that the current temporary use permit and license with the city is what we're talking about now, I would recommend approval of case number 2015-1768, the certificate of appropriateness for the temporary sidewalk vestibule for 12 West William Street, with the approval of all staff recommendations except for the following 2 changes. In the preambular paragraph, change the date that currently reads April 30th, 2016, so that it reads September 30th, 2016. And then in paragraph 1, likewise change the date that currently reads April 30th, 2016, so that it reads September 30th, 2016. The second of the 2 paragraphs currently labeled number 3 should be labeled number 4. And that is the end of that. Everything else would stand.
okay, so you're leaving the first number 3.
Yes, first number
Still
3.
number 3. You're still leaving that with a permit then that runs through April 30th, 2017,
That's if they reapply.
if they reapply. So
Right.
they'll be reapplying for 5 or 6 months rather.
Yes.
Okay.
If they wish to do so, which is not up to me, obviously.
Ready for a
I would
second?
prefer 6 months.
I'll second that.
Welcome to amend.
Okay,
Well, I
We
think
had-
the original second.
we have a second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm
We're
sorry.
just clarifying the,
I'm good.
are you good with the wording?
I'll get it. I'll got it.
We're just extending the
figure it
way
out.
it is.
All right.
Is there any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mr. Nicely,
Yes.
Ms. Riviera,
Yes.
Councilman Rohr,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hatton,
Yes.
Chairman Coke.
Yes.
See, that wasn't so hard.
Thank God we don't have any more. Oh, wait.
So, quick question. We don't have to take it down on the 30th of this month, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
October though, man. It's coming.
It's coming.
Just in time for the snow.
Yeah, probably.
Halloween snow.
Okay, calling back to order here. Item 3B on our agenda tonight is application 2015-2345. This is a request by 12 West Restaurant for a revision to the November 18th, 2015 Certificate of Appropriateness for the restoration of the west elevation of 12 West William Street, which is Zone B2 in the Central Business District and is located in the transitional sub-district of the Downtown Historic District overlay. Diane, do we have a staff report?
Yes, we do. This is the same property, obviously. It's our location map, zoning, historic district map, aerial. This is the existing building and the streetscape prior to the demolition of 14 West William. And back in the fall, with the original restoration of the west wall, at that time, the applicants were thinking about removing the stucco wing wall, which was essentially, it surmised that it filled in the gap between 12 West William and 14 West William. And at that time, this was in November, this was the condition of that original interior side of that wing wall. And this was the condition of the west elevation after the demolition of 14 West William. And this is the restoration efforts as of today. The applicant retained an engineer, retained a contractor, applied for the proper permits, has been getting the approvals along the way, and the restoration is almost completed. So everything has been going as per the HPC certificate of appropriateness for that project. What the applicants would like to do now is to leave that stucco wing wall in place. And so what we're looking for is a revision to that original certificate of appropriateness where HPC had allowed for its removal. But now with it being left in place, the applicants, I believe, you were wanting to leave it as is, or do you have something in mind to give a more finished look to it?
Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but I always go back to this building is quite the challenge, and I'm sorry to go back and forth with you on this issue, but now that we've got most of the construction on that west wall done, What we probably are going to do is what you all wanted us to do initially, and that is take off that extension, if you will, that
Okay.
3 foot. So sorry to interrupt. We know we're changing.
No,
on you.
that's all right.
It's just, again, we just had to get to this point. And
Number 2 then?
I'm sorry.
You do not want us to put on number 2?
No, we'll probably change that.
But it's possible we could add something different to number
Is it
2.
item number 2?
We The only thing we've wanted, and again, this is just ongoing, this is developing, we just talked about today, we're short on storage space. And if you can see on that one photo, get right there, we were just considering in the last 3 days, there is space underneath there, because in there is up steps that go up to the second floor. If we put a door in there, could we be able to store some of our patio stuff, or just storage things we need?
Our temporary
Probably put an elevator in there.
That would be nice. That would be
So
nice.
obviously, that used to be where the stairs were.
The stairs would never, the stairs kind of run,
What's that goes there? I thought that was where-
that goes underneath the stairs.
Oh, no, he's saying,
That's
No.
the top landing.
No, I know, but see the ghost, that's where the stairs used to be,
yeah,
correct?
there used to be stairs
okay.
there.
So
Yeah.
Oh,
stairway
yes.
has been split.
Yes, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that was my question. How do you get up to the
And
second
so
floor?
the stairway is here now, and
Correct.
the applicants realize that there's the space underneath those stairs that would make a nifty storage spot. And so they had discussion with the chief building official this morning, and he relayed to me as well that the interior of this little storage space would need to be fire rated. And the entry door, which would be installed right here, would also need to be fire rated as well. And so I'm not sure if you had looked into styles.
We hadn't yet, we just did this past week.
Okay.
And that was
And
good
so
usage.
the applicants are coming to APC this evening to, request approval to install an entry door right here. And then as to the style, whether it's standard flush door or a panel door, remembering that it would need to be steel and fire rated.
Right. So, but your request now is to tear the wing off, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
that's-
So,
To leave it the way it was decided previously, because we already told them they had to take the wing off.
okay.
Did we not?
So really, B,
You asked it to, but
You wanted
it
to
was
tear it
based
off, and now
on
you don't want to tear
stability
it off.
and
Right.
security.
Is that what-
No, they want to
We
tear it off.
need to talk one at a time so that the recording records what we're doing.
Right, so, I'm sorry.
Is what I'm hearing, you want to withdraw the second request?
Yes.
In that case?
Yes.
Yeah, we want that on record as the second case.
Okay.
Withdraw.
Now let's tell us what the second case is. Just,
B,
Item B on the agenda.
item B on the agenda.
You don't want that anymore, is that?
You want to withdraw that?
We're going to remove the wing.
Well, then how did we get permission to install the door?
This is new. This is what they're asking for now.
Well, maybe we want to modify
Right.
2, 3, 4, 5 instead of dismiss it and have nothing.
That's an
Right.
option.
I'm not an attorney, but
I just want to make sure we weren't confused.
That's kind of, I kind of wonder if that might not be a more expeditious way of.
otherwise they're going to have to file another application and
That could be an option.
so since I guess we're kind of talking to the applicants anyway here. We know Jim Manos's plan is to have a patio. Diane, do you know how far back that patio or where
We
Jim's storefront would be? Building
The
front.
storefront itself is 23 foot back, so his building is going to start here, be right at the Hardy plank.
Okay,
And so this is metal siding, and all of that will be covered by the new building.
okay. And then I assume he'll have a fence, wrought iron fence that's going forward for his patio along his property line.
No.
There you go.
Well, in this particular case, if you would like.
It's our property line, but we've
Well, there's
agreed to
a,
an easement. We're sharing that space with Mr. Manos.
so are you going to
Okay.
have to get an easement to the easement so that you can have access
Well, I
to
think
the
this
storage
is fine.
No,
closet?
that's in the easement.
Yeah, it's already taken care of.
So where I'm going with that is we will have full view of that from the street. or from the
Right.
sidewalk.
Yeah, our anticipation is we'll like to clean that up and paint it black.
Okay.
So it matches the backside and you know, it flows aesthetically, I guess, as best you can, and as we like to say, goes away.
And so then you were talking about easements, so that I just understand. So what you're saying is the plan then for Manos would be to run his fence and tie it directly into your building?
He would use that space all the way up against our wall, if you will.
Okay, so again, my question is, he would have, there's gonna be a fence up here, right?
I'm not sure what he's gonna
He has
do.
a-
There has.
He has a brick knee wall
There's
Okay,
a brick
so-
knee wall along the side.
And that's gonna tie into your building?
right to our building.
Okay, so there's gonna have to be some sort of a gate there
Hmm.
for you to get back to that. You'll have a sidewalk or part of this patio paving, whatever that is that you want. Okay. I was trying to visualize what this is gonna look like from the street.
I forgot about that.
So then who remembers how tall that knee wall was? It 3 feet?
Yep.
So taller?
Was it 4?
Okay, which blocks a lot of view from an auto perspective, maybe not quite so much from a pedestrian, depending how tall you are. Or an adult pedestrian. I'm just thinking because if it's gonna be a steel fireproof door, that kind of limits your ability to have I mean,
You said a 1-hour door?
I believe that's what.
I think there are options, aesthetic options for a 1-hour steel door. You could have pressed panels in it.
okay.
It's certainly not going to be a leaded glass decorative door.
You know, I mean, we can put something together and just leave the final selection of the door. You know,
Hard to
just
use
get
the
their
door.
administrative approval.
We can say that our goal would be to get black, just so it matches with everything else.
You're gonna take that west-facing wall of your building and just paint what's there black?
That was the second request, new request. They are requesting to repaint the now exposed, previously painted brick wall and the hardy plank, which covers this stairwell, the same color. And then the color is to be determined, but you're saying,
We just thought black would be the easiest.
You're sure missing an aesthetic opportunity to make your building look better.
Well, I don't think I have. I just only have so much in the budget to take care of it. And,
I can understand that.
you know, what, again, these are, everyone has issues, but, you know, for this particular case, we just had to replace the piping in the bathroom. The clay pipes just, I don't know what the word is.
Weren't there.
They disintegrated, whatever it was. And we just had to replace that. That was $10,000. That wall's 12. So I'm doing what I can.
I understand.
You know, I don't.
Sometime in the future, that could look really good. That's the original 1860s or whatever
I can look,
brick wall of the west wall of the building.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to try to find quotes and see what would be, I mean, I don't know if that white paint comes off easily or if it's challenging. I don't know. I'm happy to try to find painters and see what it would cost to say.
Well,
I agree with you. It looks good. That brick does look good. I'm just assuming, I don't know what it would cost, but I'm happy to talk to a few guys and see how much it would be.
Well, I understand your economic issues as a building owner myself, and having been through similar kinds of situations, not quite as extreme as yours, but personally, I appreciate your finding a way to work cooperatively with the next door neighbor and his plans. It's not always easy, but I think the end result will be a great improvement for everybody.
Well, I'll make a commitment, Mr. Chairman. I'll find out if what it would take, not only financially, but how much effort it would be to restore back to that original brick. Because I agree, it does look nice, and if Mr. Manos builds a knee wall, whatever it is, and that's similar, you know, sort of style brick.
Maybe Mr. Manos could make a contribution for a visual improvement to his patio.
It's right there.
Good luck.
Everything in the patio.
Well, okay.
We'll check it out though. I probably, we'll get estimates or bids and see what it means.
Well, we need a motion.
Before you do that, can I
Yes,
ask a question, maybe more of staff in that case? Since, would they be required to paint that? I mean, at some point, you kind of got, it's the patina and character.
It is,
that we all-
it's probably historic now.
No, I seriously, I think from my perspective, it's more interesting to look at that the same way whitewashed, brick that's peeling is more interesting, than brand new latex on top of it. And that doesn't tie, because once you paint it, that is going to be real hard to get it off.
We thought you guys would like black just because we have black on the back end. And that would be like a third or fourth color if we did that
Yeah.
whitewash brick, and that's why we went.
Well, I'm just thinking, like you said, from a temporary standpoint, if maybe you want to do something down the road, are they required to paint that?
Actually, there's part of it that is unpainted, the part that's under the stairway.
Right,
Is
yeah.
unpainted brick, and so we have a specific,
And the upper portion is very lightly painted. So again, if you down the road were to, want to do that, maybe when funds are more available.
Yeah, that's all I'm thinking.
The issue is there's paint and then there's stucco. There's a thick layer of stucco that someone, when the staircase was there, redid that with stucco. So it's getting
that
that
was
off.
to make
could
it
be-
look nice.
Well, of course, but getting that off could be extremely difficult.
Maybe there's.
Do you
bills-
suppose that if you leave it the way it is and don't paint it,
Mhm.
conceivably that might be an inducement to your neighbor to chip in a little to have it cleaned up?
Could be. I mean, do we know when construction started? Has there been any
Well, he
updates?
submitted building permits or building plans earlier
Yesterday,
last week or yesterday.
yeah, yesterday.
And he made it sound like he's chomping a bit.
Lance, since that is now going to be visible from the streetscape, does that, even though it's not the front facade, is that something that might be a matching grant candidate?
Yes, if we had funds available.
Well, do we expect next fiscal year that funds might be available? Is
There
any-
should be, even if it's a small amount.
So that might be an opportunity, if you could buy you time for, 6 months or whenever the new fiscal year starts, there might be an opportunity to get the state to kick in 50% to help you bring that back to brick.
And before that becomes public, you might get your neighbor to commit to 50%.
50 here, 50 there.
And I'm sorry, was that a state grant or city?
Yeah, they can.
It's
It's
our
a matching
local downtown facade improvement program that we had
Many
talked about.
downtown businesses have availed themselves of those funds and done great things, so
Okay.
why not?
Yeah, we've
I mean, you
a lot
guys
of
might be an opportunity for you.
Okay.
I've heard of it.
Okay, so we need a motion that will convert this application from what its original intent was to a new purpose. And do we have anyone
We gotta figure out what's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what goes-
I think, number one, you could leave in there because it's an if statement, so if they intend to leave the law, even though they're not going to, I mean, it becomes a moot point. Any significant revisions to the approved plans would need at minimum administrative approval. So that might, we could put including the addition of a fire rated door to the south end of the stairwell, or
Do you want to add or do we need to add the administrative approval on the design of the door?
If that's, that's what you prefer.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Does the current door that's in that wing wall meet the architectural standard? Because it's metal.
It's also not a fire-rated door. I can
No.
pretty much tell from looking at it. The fact that it has a metal skin on it does not make it a fire-rated door.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
It's what's in between the metal skin and how thick the metal skin is and how the gasketing around the door. And
We appreciate your efforts to preserve the
Yeah,
historic
well,
door.
It's been there, and I mean, it could be, who knows how old that door is.
It probably has taken on
Could be
a
8 years.
historic
There you
picture of
go.
its own. So
All right,
are
well,
we-
Joe's still working,
Oh,
I think, or-
Okay, so as far as number two, I would just, leave it the same except change the period to a comma, including the addition of a door to the south side of the stair structure. And that would be subject to administrative approval. Three seems like it should still be
Mhm.
four. Seems reasonable.
Number 5 in the staff recommendations, am I correct in observing on the way over here that that's already been done?
Yes.
Okay.
Where are we at? Oh, the hardy plank.
So that, I mean,
Probably
I'd really
right.
just strike five, I think, at this point, probably not. If it's already accomplished, or just leave it in.
Leave it in.
All right, and then add I guess, a sixth. Actually, as part of number two, in addition to mentioning the door, you could also just add to that would we just add to that the repair or, updating of the west facade? Or just-
How do we handle that?
The west brick wall, you want to do the administrative?
Right. I mean, is that just something we can do with administrative approval down the
They're
road?
not really committing to do anything.
Yeah,
They just said
just
he'd
leave it out.
review it.
But
Or we
you
could
do
always-
plan on painting the basement, or the the second floor stairwell, so that hardy plank will be painted. So we would need at least administrative approval on that color.
What if we just say,
That's encompassed in number 1, isn't it? As well as a plan for use of appropriate materials and colors.
well, that was only in reference to the wing wall though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
What if we just say any
Any
future
alternate-
improvements or alterations to the west facade as part of that? I'll let you draft the language, but
Okay, I can draw the
it's a catch-all.
to the,
If I can mention really quickly, sorry.
Make sure we're all on the same page.
So right now, you see where we're planning on installing the door? Just so you know, above that is hardy plank, and the sides of the door that meet the frame are also hardy plank. So they haven't put the hardy plank on yet because we haven't determined if a door is going to go there. We're waiting for approval.
That
And
door,
then-
I'm sorry, go ahead. The door is pretty much going to take up the entire width of that wall, isn't it?
It's probably 4.5 feet.
Hmm.
So it's kind of wide, so he'll run hardy plank down the side and then up top. So that it's not going to be drywall. It's not going to be like that. It's actually going to have the hardy plank above it, if that makes sense. I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware.
okay. Would it be, would this be sufficient for number 6 then? Any improvements to the west facade shall be subject to administrative approval. And that, I mean, that's general enough that it covers material.
I think so.
Good.
All right, so I think we got a motion.
I'll second that.
Do
Would you
you,
like me to read on?
No, we're not adding the future improvements to the west facade under number 2 now, you're adding the number 6.
Okay, yeah, I'll just go down the list, just to make sure we're all on the same page. All right, I move to approve case number 2015-2345 with the inclusion of all staff recommendations and the following changes. Suggestion number 2 of staff, change the period to a comma and add the following language, including the addition of a door to the south side of the stair structure. And adding number 6, any improvements to the west facade shall be subject to administrative approval. That's the motion.
Do you want, does it
I'm sorry.
need to say fire rated?
Building code.
The building,
Require that.
yeah, code.
We have a motion.
I seconded already.
Well, we have a second from Mr. Haddon. These progressive motions. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mr. Nicely,
Yes.
Ms. Rivera,
Yes,
Councilman Rohr,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hatton,
Yes.
Chairman Coe.
Yes. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. You can see that we have to deal, being essentially a part of the city government, we have many issues to deal with that, don't necessarily, that are not necessarily easily understood by the public. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for your attention to this building. Thank you for coming tonight.
Well, thank you all. We appreciate the effort you guys do. I know it's not always easy, and you always try to help us out to get to where we need to be. And so we appreciate everything you all do, and thank you very much. And we'll see you in 6 months, I guess.
Or before, for the job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Item number 4 on the agenda is commission member comments and discussion. How are we coming on illegal signage, non-compliant signage?
Illegal, non-compliant signage is a constant battle. And just walking down the alleys today, more have popped up that it's like, where did this come from?
Dandelions.
Yes. And so I think we will need to get on an education campaign. Perhaps make some small flyers or brochures that, we can give to Main Street Delaware and Chamber of Commerce and, just put them in a user-friendly format that new business owners and building owners can swing in and pick up, saying, remember you're in the historic district and blah, 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 blah.
Well, everybody knows that the more signage you have, the more stuff you sell.
So, and.
I was being facetious, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's got to be bigger too.
Oh, yeah. Has there been any further discussion about the sandwich board signs? The issue of having them or not having them? Are they contributing? Are they not contributing? Are they a danger to the public safety? Do we still need them?
Well, that, when doing the review for the vestibule, that fell into that topic of clutter on the sidewalk. So, that's something that we can explore further.
Yeah, I think we need direction from the commission. If that's something that you want us to explore, we would need, a motion saying, let's explore whatever to
Let me
take
just
the next steps.
ask of the commission members here, just as a non-committing straw poll, how many of us feel that these sidewalk sitting sandwich signs are a positive benefit and we need to keep them? And or how many feel that they serve their purpose of trying to rejuvenate a dead downtown business district, and now they're an obstacle to public safety and passage? I think they've I'll just start off. I think they've outgrown their usefulness, and they now are more of a negative contribution than a positive one. We wanted them initially because we wanted people to realize that the downtown was trying to become a vibrant place again. We had real businesses. And now we have so many people on the sidewalk on a First Friday that the city police department is after the Main Street group to close the sidewalks or close the streets and open the whole thing up. So it just seems to me that these sandwich signs have done their job and exceeded their usefulness.
We talked about it last time, and I have mixed thoughts, but I will say that I think some of the signs are done really well. I think, for instance, I always enjoy seeing what Witticisms Barley Hopsters has. I also like seeing what sort of beer they have.
And I think Stoss does the same thing. you know,
Yes,
so-
I think if I had a restaurant or if I had a microbrew where, my brews on tap change every other day
Or your
or my
specials.
special changes, as somebody, I think that the other thing is it's very pedestrian oriented, which I like. They're not really aimed at the cars going by. But I was also the guy that complained about the one in front of Restoration Works clogging the whole thing up. So I'd like to see them stay. I just think we probably need to maybe do a little bit better job of policing them in the right of way.
Maybe either contain them within a patio, if they have a patio permit, or within so many feet of the front of the building, so that they don't, prevent somebody that's got a stroller from,
Yeah.
getting between the tree and the sandwich board.
Well, First Friday's an outlier. I mean,
Yeah. But
it's
no, I think-
crazy, most First Fridays, but there are just in general, if you do have a narrow passageway.
Yeah, but I do think, like you say, some of them actually have some funny things, just things that are amusing and I think entertaining, and I think, part of what downtown wants to do is entertain people. And I think as far as restaurants, if I had a restaurant, that's how I'd get my specials out on the sidewalk. But I think they just got to be reined in so that they're not a hazard to pedestrian traffic.
I did have a question, and do we have, because one of the things that the A-frames also serve is for businesses like in the alley, those sort of things, to direct traffic ollies, those sort of folks. Do we allow it for second floor, third store, a floor? Because to me, that's now granted, most of those aren't retail, but if we have a yoga studio, or I know we had a second floor dance studio for a while.
They're becoming retail.
Yeah. Or at the very least, it's an insurance guy or an attorney or something. And if I'm thinking, oh, hey, here I am. Because now all of a sudden, if we've got 3 per storefront, we get a lot of A-frames out there.
I'm not sure we've had a request for a second floor A-frame yet. We've seen one. They're permitted, so they just put them out. I'm not sure we've had one for a second. Now, we've had some off-site, or the ones behind.
Right,
Flower shops, one example, they put theirs out. They're allowed. Ones that have no requirement.
I was just curious about that.
Yeah. Anyway, my own 2 cents on that, I guess, is sort of a similar thought for businesses that are on the side streets, but particularly those that are up on second or even third floors. And I can just say for myself, I know people rarely look up. You can have a sign up there, people aren't going to notice it. You got to have something in their face at street level. I think maybe a better approach before we start talking about more restrictive measures is much like was suggested, do a public awareness campaign, just saying, be polite. Don't put it right in the main spot where the traffic is. Put it just a little bit off so you're not clogging in. See if that gets anything. I mean, maybe not everyone will comply voluntarily, but most people probably will. We're decent people in the downtown. And we're only asking for a few inches, right? So maybe try that first and see what happens.
Personally, they don't bother me. I sort of like reading them, walking around them. I sort of like the feel you get when you're downtown in the evening, a little bit of congestion, and I think that draws more people too. So to me, it would help the businesses.
I need to know what Witt's flavor of the day is before I make that half block walk. So, just saying.
That'll bother me.
Never mind.
Just from a past experience perspective, from a code enforcement perspective, would be get rid of them, make enforcement a lot easier. However, doing that would be very controversial, because what we fight now is a lot of illegal signs.
Yeah.
Now you're limiting signs. That would probably.
And I think those do have a practical benefit to the.
So do you want to complain about the kids on your grass, Roger?
And I think what's happened with more patios we have, some of the signs are limiting. We require a 5-foot through lane. Some of those signs are starting to impede that. The patios are pushing them out
The
further.
most effective place to put that sign is right in the middle of a 5-foot walkway.
Of
course.
You never
Read
read
it that way.
That's.
All right, never mind. Item 5, oh, is there anything else? Anybody else want to moan about anything?
Nothing tonight.
Item 5 on the agenda is election of officers. Have people given any thought about that?
I am more than happy to renominate you, assuming that you would like to serve. And the thought being that you, know a lot about downtown. You're down here a lot. And since I'm as vice chair, sometimes they have to reach out to me if it's one of your buildings. And I guarantee you the turnaround time with you is faster because you're here all the time. So unless anybody else has any.
I would like to nominate the current administration, both chair and vice.
I would second that.
I'll be your
To
deputy.
close the nomination.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe.
Yes.
Mr. Nicely.
Yes.
Ms. Rivera,
Yes.
Councilman Rohr,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hatton,
Yes,
Chairman Coe.
Yes. Thank you.
if you're willing to do it.
Our next regular meeting, well, I hope you all realize that if there's anything that I do that annoys you, that you think is inappropriate, you'll let me know some way. Our next,
You know that I will.
So no.
I wouldn't dare.
our next regular meeting, if it occurs, will be on May 25th, 2016. I have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I think that makes us adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Thanks for serving.
Not me.